What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're finally working on the 1964 giveaway Beetle. We haven't really done anything to this car since we brought it home from Florida on the trip to Turkey Rod Run in Daytona. We kind of just put it on the lift and got a look around it and got a checklist of parts that we needed to kind of do some maintenance on it. Well, those parts are in, so this episode is going to be us putting those parts in. And this is all perfect timing because all of the suspension components from Everesto in England are a day out. I think they're supposed to show up tomorrow. And I'm talking everything that we're going to be doing in this car. So we have just about 2 weeks before Eurotripper in Fort Myers, Florida. We're planning on taking the Beetle, possibly the Beetle and the 700. The 700 still has a few things left to do on that before that's ready for Eurotripper. But since the Beetle and the 700 will both fit on the trailer, we might take both of them. All right, Beetle's in the shop, and here's the first batch of stuff that we've got for it. We've got spare tire well pan, which is a little crusty. This one down in there is a little crusty, so we're going to replace that. Yeah, you can see the daylight. So that'll replace that. We got some seals.
One for windshield and one for the back windshield.
Yeah, as you guys can see here, the windshield seal is non-existent, kind of gave up. My buddy Will, who owned this car before me, had done some seals. So there are a few seals that have been done, but there's a few more that have yet to be done. So yeah, we've got some seals.
These are for the pop-outs. I found these for the pop-outs.
Perfect. Those are also trashed and completely gone.
And this goes inside the pop-outs. You cut it to fit.
Yep. Got our cable in that bag there. Another parking brake.
Throttle cable, because we knew that was about to give up on life.
Yep. Even once we get it on the lift, you could feel it on the pedal that it's pretty gritty. Once you put it on the lift, it's like not even straight anymore. It's all just like kinked and rusty. Pushrod tube seals. That's a whole seal kit.
Yeah, complete engine seal kit, just in case we needed anything.
Yep. One of the first steps is fixing the actual hood. And you can see in here where it's broken, the tension of the spring has just let that go, and it's not supposed to do that.
Yep.
So we'll have to take this off and bridge that, re-weld it, and get that thing back to where it needs to be, but also strong, so the spring can allow it to help lift up and stay up. Yep. This was an Oklahoma car originally, and it's been in Florida for a matter of years now. And as I mentioned in the episode where we picked this thing up, the patina is just perfect. I mean, this thing, being a 64 small window car with this patina is just so cool. We're from New Hampshire, so finding a Beetle like this, normally if it's got patina like this, it's got a whole lot of rot underneath. Mm-hmm. And this does not, which is amazing. It's got a few little rust spots here and there, but it's a solid car. That side bumper mount's being held on by a vice grip. So we got some stuff we got to tidy up on this thing. It runs really well when it's getting good gasoline. It runs real well. First crank, which is great. But the problem is it's not getting good gasoline right now. So that's another thing we're going to sort out.
And it should stay open.
Yeah, it should. And you can see the gaps here are all wrong too because of it, how it's come apart. So we'll get that sorted too. All right, so we've taken a look up underneath. We have some moisture. We're wondering if the rear main seal might be a cause of some of this oil. The gearbox has a whole bunch of moisture around it. We don't really know what that's about yet, but we do have a rear main seal in the package of seals. And we've got pushrod tube seals. The pushrod tubes look good. They're not adjustable, so they're a little bit more difficult to replace than the adjustable ones where you can collapse them and then lengthen them once they're back up in place. Just got to pull the push rod itself out. And to do all this stuff, especially the rear main seal, you got to drop the motor. So we kind of stood around wondering what we were going to do next. I think we're just going to pull the motor. Just going to get it out. They're so easy to take out anyway, so we're just going to drop that. And aside from bonnet rebuilding, we've also got to sort out the bumper mount here. Will had a pair of vice grips holding this side on. When the motor comes out, this will come off. We'll figure that out as well.
Show this fuel filter again.
This is the second fuel filter we put in. Yep.
It's mud again.
Another fuel filter, but we do need to drop the tank as well and flush that tank out.
Just makes sense to pull it.
Yep. So the spring on these hoods are like borderline dangerous. Oh yeah, because they sit in that set of holes right there, and Corey just released it, and it just hammered out of there.
Yeah, I knew it was gonna be
Quite violent.
quite a task, but
Yeah. All right, so bonnet's off, and look at how sick this is. This goes right back to my love for patina. If this was just found somewhere and there was no car attached to it, like this would just be a perfect wall piece. So this is the carnage. It ripped here. It's starting to rip there. It's separated all the way from there to here. And you can see how it's overlapped here, and they line up at the very top, and this has kind of worked its way down, and it's kinked here. So we're going to try to pull it up and maybe drill a few holes and plug weld it to this. All right, so we're basically all unhooked. We've got one of the aprons out. If you guys are Volkswagen air-cooled guys, you know, like, you can drop these motors in no time. I remember my grandfather telling me all these stories. Even my great-grandfather, who drove cross-country. I didn't tell this story yet. This might be a good time. My great-grandfather retired from the Postal Service, worked at my local post office for years, long before my time. Retired and had a Volkswagen Beetle, and him and my great-grandmother towed a camper behind their Beetle and drove cross-country from New Hampshire all the way to California. Went to Arizona. I think in Arizona is where they lost second gear because that's the gear they were always in. Hauling a camper behind one of these things. I can't remember if it was a Super Beetle at the time. It doesn't matter. It was an air-cooled Volkswagen, but they did coast to coast hauling a camper in a Beetle. I'm gonna put it up in the air. We'll get the other bolts out and we'll drop her down.
I don't think he did any work to this thing.
All right, so we got it in the air. We got one bolt out from up top, and there should be three more. There's two on top, two on bottom, except there isn't. There isn't a bolt. I don't know if I can get to this. It's behind the clutch cable. Regardless, we're missing a motor mount bolt. There's only four that hold the whole motor in. I can see the shaft moving as we're moving the motor.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Came off of it.
Yep. Forward and tilt it. All right, up. Up and out.
All right, we're out, and we were curious of state of the clutch, and it looks brand new.
Brand new.
Not mad at that. So the 64 didn't come with a dual port motor in it. I'm almost positive. I know all you air-cooled guys will correct us on that, but we're pretty sure this was a single port 1500 originally.
6 volt too, so it's been.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so this was a 6 volt car. It's been converted to 12 volt, which is great because I would have wanted to do that already or anyway. But good to know that the clutch is in good shape, so we don't have to mess with that. It starts fine. It ran okay. So basically all we're doing is resealing stuff and just dialing it in a little bit more. So you OGs on the channel know that that's what that's supposed to look like in there with this guy right here that is supposed to ride on. So our parts are correct.
Yeah. Cap rotor points look good. Points were replaced.
Condenser is probably replaced as well.
Yeah.
With it. Yeah, rotor cap, all that looks good. This was best case scenario simply because my buddy Will, who had this, him and his buddies are air-cooled Volkswagen guys, and they kind of like tinkered on it. And I think who Will bought it from was also an enthusiast who had kind of gone through it. I think they were the ones who 12 volt converted it. Yeah, I mean, axle boots have been done. Those are new. It's had a starter at some point. Is this broken?
No.
Really? Was that milled out?
Oh.
Was that milled for a... Oh, I bet this was milled for a 200 mil flywheel for the 1600.
Yeah.
And they went too far right here.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so some of you guys may remember I had to clearance my magnesium case crash box in the 59 pan that's under the Auto Union in order to fit a 200 millimeter flywheel for a later Type 1 motor, because I was originally going to put a 1600 in it, and that had a 200 mil flywheel that would not fit in the original case of the magnesium crash box. And that's exactly what they've done here. It'd take me a little bit longer to figure that out if I hadn't already done that. But since this is a dual port, it has a 200 millimeter flywheel, and this transmission was not set up for a 200 mil flywheel, and they've ground it out, the casing, to fit the flywheel, and they've gone too far right here.
Yeah.
And they've like ground through the actual bolt hole. Luckily, it doesn't thread until the backside. It obviously has a nut, but they went too far. The one I did on the Auto Union pan was my first one, so I just went a little bit at a time. It took me longer than most people probably, but I kept fitting the flywheel. I had an extra flywheel with some bolts on it so I could sit it over the shaft and rotate it, and I could feel if there was any drag somewhere. And what I would do is I would ground away, spray paint, put the flywheel in, flywheel would pull the paint away from wherever it hit, and then I knew as soon as that thing would spin freely, I didn't have to grind any more away. So this one was probably just done. They probably just like ground a whole bunch away and
Old school.
went way too far. Well, that's not the end of the world. It'll still bolt in and hold just fine.
We do got to get some trans mounts. These are blown out.
Yeah, you guys may have noticed that. The transmission mounts here are just pancaked. If you guys aren't into it, I don't want to hear the complaining, because we're going to the floor with this Beetle. We're going to slam this thing. But the suspension's adjustable, so whoever wins this thing will be able to raise it if they want to. But we have yet to know whether or not we're going to do a transmission raise in this thing, depending on how low we actually go. All right, so next day, we've got a storm, pretty bad storm, rolling through Chattanooga here pretty soon. So the 700 is kind of cramping our space for the time being, simply because we've got some heavy winds and a lot of rain coming. So outside right now is looking okay. But inside, we're starting to tear down on the motor. All right, so while Corey works on tearing down the motor, I'm pulling the fuel tank out. So I've got the fuel line disconnected up underneath the fuel tank, above the pan head. Unfortunately, going to have to put the 700 outside. Clearly, as you can see, it's used to being outside. But now that they're mine, I keep all these patinaed cars inside out of the rain. I take care of them like they're like a brand new car I'd never want to see salt, even though they've spent decades languishing in the woods and swamps. It's like, keep them dry, keep them inside. It's so funny that all my vehicles with paint are outside and all the cars without paint are inside. Gonna drop the Beetle down, pull the fuel tank so we can actually flush it and clean all that gunk out. Corey's over here working on the teardown. How is it going?
Nice. Everything's coming apart super nice.
Like it's a Florida car?
Like it's a Florida car. Yep.
Awesome. The jugs look okay, huh?
It's clean.
Yeah.
Nice engine.
All right, so about to pull the fuel tank out, and this is a first for me as well, so I'll let you guys know how this goes. So the cap on top of the fuel tank is right here, and the fuel gauge in these cars is mechanical. It's a little cable that goes up to the fuel gauge. This just pries off. Just get any sort of like flat pry bar, screwdriver or whatever. And this comes off. The housing of the cable sits right in this little groove. And then the cable itself has a little ball on the end, and it fits into this little arm. So literally just a flat screwdriver relieves the fuel gauge cable. It's just got some clamps here. There's supposed to be one here. There's one there, and there's supposed to be one there. So we'll probably end up getting some of these made up, and we can make our own. All right, well, the fuel tank is out, as you can see in the trunk bay here. We need the fuel tank out to get to the upper body mounts that bolt to the beam itself, which is coming out because we are lowering this. We've got a beam coming from Everesto. We've got all shortened steering components coming from Everesto. And also, as you can see here, we need to sort out our steering rag here. So have one of those already, thanks to my friend Tyler. A local buddy of mine had given me one that he had laying around for the Beetle pan that's under the Auto Union. So since that's already here, we got one last thing we need to order to replace, because as you can see, that one is just roached. I see some push rods.
Yes. Yeah, so we loosened up the head bolts, pulled the head back just a little bit, just enough to get these out of their home.
Yep.
That way you can replace the seals that go on the ends and clean them up and
Yep.
make sure they're good. And then just push the head back on and torque it.
And that's like the OEM way to do it.
It is.
Because in the 700, I've got the like adjustable ones. They've got a little jam nut with some threads, and I have seen the spring-loaded ones where, as you've seen as well, that distance doesn't have to change. You don't have to loosen your head studs and pull your jugs back or your heads back. You can collapse this to a shorter distance, put it in, and then lengthen it against your new seals.
If you're replacing them with the two-piece ones, you can just cut the old ones out.
Exactly.
So you just
Once
cut
you
them out.
pull the
Yeah.
push rod out.
Push rod out.
Cut it.
Cut it.
Yep.
Put the new two-piece one in, so you don't actually have to touch the head.
That's what I did. So we're just doing the seals, so he's doing it literally the way they would have done it at Volkswagen back in the day. Okay, so I was just the one Hulk Hoganing the fuel tank above the drain. Yeah, I'm a little strokey right now. Well, Corey unhooked the fuel line, and literally nothing came out of it. And I drove the Beetle in here.
Oh, a little.
But there's nothing coming out of that. Cannot believe that this thing drove in here under its own power. The little bit of fuel we have in here, see if you can get a view in there.
Yep.
That is not good. I can't believe the car was running.
I know.
There's like no fuel. We're not looking at fuel. That's like just sludge. Yeah. And then it was running on what that was.
We took it to coffee multiple times.
We did drive it. We probably put 10 miles on it. You know, it's not far to coffee, but we probably did 10 to 20 miles in this car without putting any fuel in it. Yeah. So it was running on whatever this is. That's crazy. All right, so put some gasoline in the tank. Didn't have much, but was able to put like, I don't know, a couple liters probably into the tank, slosh it around a whole bunch, drained it back out. This is the result. Look at the sediment moving around in there. Yep, that's not good. I was leaking a bunch of fuel around the sending unit gasket, so that's probably bad as well. I did order a whole bunch of stuff this morning, but I'm going to put together another parts list, so we're going to get another one of these. Push rod tube seals are in. He did a valve adjustment on it. Moving right along on this thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the rear bumper mounts, because it looks like the passenger side rear bumper mount had some rusted bolts that snapped off, so now it's just being held in with a vice grip. Suspension teardown will be in the next episode. That's what we're going to move on to from here. So while Corey's working on the motor, I'm going to take a look at what we can do to get this bumper mounted that doesn't involve vice grips. You can see here on the driver's side, it just takes 2 bolts into what is probably just a threaded insert on that like frame rail. And on this side, and we'll show it here shortly, this vice grip is kind of holding this whole bumper like arm to the car. And I can see in this eyelet that one is snapped right off, and I can kind of see in this one that it's snapped off too. All right, bumper is out. So this is what we're used to seeing back home in New Hampshire. Wrought and snapped off rusted bolts. What I want to do here is drill these out. I'll cut this off flush, drill them out. And rather than deal with the rotted nuts that are welded on the backside of this like channel, I think I'm going to drill all the way through it, all the way into here, and we'll just through bolt them. All right, so I drilled out the broken off bolts and all the way through into the backside of the frame rail itself. So we can essentially just through bolt it with a big washer on both of these. That's that done. Now we can actually mount the bumper and not have to use a pair of vice grips.
Upgrades.
Upgrades. New everything now. I mean, he's polishing up all the tin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Gotta do it.
Yeah, look like a brand new motor.
Yep.
Yeah. All the little gaskets are new. Metal and rubber.
Yep.
All that we really have left to do on that will be a remain seal. We might not do that now, but it'll be done before it goes back in the car. All right, rear bumper is back on and solid. So that's a good improvement there. Had some metric zinc bolts laying around. Special delivery. So this came in at the beginning of the episode, essentially. Like the very beginning, it was supposed to be in tomorrow. Well, it came in today, which is yesterday when we're filming right now, which is today, which is tomorrow for you guys. Okay, so they started with some promotional gear. Cool little banner we'll add to the wall of banners.
Yep.
Got a t-shirt and some stickers. I really like the colors.
Yeah, it's cool. Like a cream off-white.
Very sick.
Often copied, never replicated.
That's the truth.
I dig it.
Awesome. Well, stoked on that. All right, we got a box of some hardware. We'll open that here in a second. All right, this I think is the skid plate. Ah, thank you. So they make all this stuff in-house. They got their E plasma cutout in it for their logo. You can still get access to your grub screw here. So yeah, that just kind of protects undercarriage. Pretty beefy. It's about like 3/16 steel or so. Steering components. So we're going with a 6-inch narrow beam in this. 6-inch narrow beam with shock towers. So we're going to run shocks for ultimate ride quality in this. And I know a lot of air-cooled guys said when you run a 6-inch narrow beam, you can't fit your shock towers anymore. Well, Everesto thought of that. So the shock towers are offset, so they come back into your wheel well and basically have factory locations. They've even made them longer so you can get more travel essentially out of a stock shock and go lower. So although your stock shock will still only compress to a certain height, when that space is elongated, you now have more drop with the same compressed height of your shock. So that's what they thought of. We're going to see that here in a minute when we pull that out. But when you narrow your beam down, you got to shorten all your steering components too, which is what we did in-house on the 700 when we shortened all that stuff ourselves. These might be rear spring plates. Look at that.
Those are nice.
So sick. And they make their drop subtle. Because these are a drop plate that essentially mount your rear end up higher from your torsion tube. So it's an immediate drop as well. And they're also adjustable. So you can adjust your ride height. And they still lock into your torsion bar in your torsion tube. So you still retain your torsion suspension. Brand new bushings as well. I mean, everything's just such nice quality. Everything's all powder coated, shortened, ready to go. So this is our long end of the tie rod assembly. All right, drop spindles. And he remachined the tie rod mount so we could flip our tie rods, which will also alleviate the tie rod arm angle when the car is super low. So that was another thing that Max did for us there. I think the Everesto beams are like the best out there. I know there's a handful of other companies, even in England, that make some really good stuff, but Everesto is just knocking it out of the park. Here is the Everesto 6-inch beam. So sick. And you can see how the shock towers step out to come back into the wheel well, and you'll be able to run shocks with your 6-inch narrow beam. Really cool to have one of these in the shop finally, all the way from England, made by the boys at Everesto. Huge shout out to Max and Jesse in the shop. Like I said, they fabricate all this stuff in-house. They do all the welding. And the shipping was so fast. I still can't get over that, how cheap the shipping was and how fast it came. Max and I were both watching the tracking, and we're like, there's no way it's going to be there tomorrow. No way. All right, guys, well, that's it for this episode. We got a bunch done on the Beetle. We got the motor pulled. Corey helped rebuild the motor, so that's almost ready to go back in. We just have like a list of stuff to just finish doing on this thing that will trickle in as we're building the suspension, which is the fun stuff that you guys want to see. It's the fun stuff that we want to see. But I am so stoked. Huge shout out to Everesto. I'm so thankful to be working with those guys on this project, which I've already talked about. We're working with Everesto on the Auto Union too. So in the next couple of weeks, trying to get that car done for Alpine Volksfair in May. So we're going to be hard on that car here pretty soon. So we're going to be working with Everesto on a couple of cars here in the shop, and I'm so excited about it. So huge thanks to Max and Jesse at Everesto in England. Again, I can't stress it enough. If you guys want to slam your Beetle, Carmen Ghia, any air-cooled Volkswagen, hit up Everesto on Instagram or their website and get a kit from them. It's high quality. You will not be disappointed. and the shipping is easy and cheap. Next episode, we're putting this stuff in that car. But we have 2 weeks before Eurotrip. We're in South Florida. That's what we're trying to take this car to. So we're going to be blitzing this thing hard the next few episodes. Going to be transforming it and laying it on the ground. So thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. It helps the channel grow in a massive way. I'm excited to be starting off the year, building something cool, not just tinkering on some of the projects already here. We're on a new project, the Giveaway 64 Beetle. So soon, we're going to be talking about how we're giving this thing away and how one of you guys can ultimately win this car. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.